Thing is, I'm a gentleman. You'd have knocked. You could have come right in.
No. But you had to go and sneak around. That's the problem with you new cops. No respect. Of course, used to be. We earned your respect. You hit us, we hit back. Made you know your place. Gave you the fear. Time to bring the fear back.
Being stuck in some video projects of movies that were connected to the world of video games, I wanted to complete a list of videos that I started a long time ago, when I made the video regarding the video game Marvel's Spider-Man. Having a list of DLCs that enlarged the story of the game, I started to explore those chapters too, but unfortunately, I had a chance to talk only about the first episode. I think it's time to complete the set. It took a while to find the footage and to re-experience the game. Now, let's see how the story went and evolved in the later episodes. When it comes to The City That Never Sleeps DLC, Insomniac Games decided to release its story in an episodic way. The first episode was overall quite fun. It brought you back to the world of Spider-Man, it gave you a new chapter to follow up, it fully brought back Black Cat into the picture, and all that dynamic between her and Spidey left the player intrigued, satisfied, and curious with what might happen next in this epilogue. When the second episode was released, the stakes went up in the sky, and with what content it was brought to the table, I did not even wonder. Turf Wars is the name of the second episode, and from the first moments of the DLC, it can clearly be seen that it will be something serious. Following the events of the heist, Hammerhead, the main villain of the DLC, decided to make his move in order to control the whole Magia organization from New York City, and started a gang war, a war so dangerous and violent that Spider-Man has to find a way to stop it, work with the cops against the bad guys, and save the day once more. Right from the beginning, the player is thrown into this war with Yuri Watanabe, one of the supporting characters from the main game, preparing an attack on one of Hammerhead's bases alongside Spider-Man. The attack is a failure. The entire team of Yuri's squad is eliminated, and Spider-Man has to find clues of Hammerhead's plan to stop him and to help Yuri to stop Hammerhead once and for all. If the first episode of the DLC was made to feel quite relaxing, like presenting a whole new adventure that might be fun and interesting, the second episode focuses a lot on the story and how the context feels heavy on Spider-Man's shoulders. This is not the same feeling from the main game. The story feels much darker and different, and stakes are quite high, and everything presented in the DLC presents this feeling. The developer's decision to focus more on a side character to see the evolution of the context, I think is a great idea. Spider-Man remains the same. He tries to be the hero, to help the cops and to stop the villain from creating chaos. Which makes sense, he is the main character of the game. And Hammerhead is just a criminal that has to be stopped, a dangerous villain who wants to control everything and rule the city. Yet Yuri, the character who was presented as the only cop who might like Spider-Man, who is his ally from the Force, and is made in a way for the player to truly like her and have comedic moments with Spider-Man. Now she has to face the dark reality of the moment. If the first episode presented Hammerhead as this new threat that we do not know too much about, but we can see it as a problem, the second episode presents him as the most unpredictable and dangerous foe they face until now. And his actions affect Yuri in ways that even Spider-Man did not believe it might be possible, making her the main focus of the context to see how even the great and good characters might fall in a single moment in darkness and have to embrace feelings of vengeance and do the unthinkable acts is one of the common themes of the comic book characters, and this DLC presents the theme incredibly well. Of course, The developers created and presented a background story to Yuri during this episode to understand her motivation of why she is so focused and determined to stop Hammerhead. It makes the player feel that the beginning of the game with the failed mission was just the trigger point for her to truly act on her own. And this thing is a good method to characterize two characters at the same time. Probably the developers thought that Yuri might need some development to not let her be this side character that shows up from time to time during the game, and wanted to make an impact on the player to show her as this tough, powerful and vengeful character, but also it made Hammerhead feel extremely dangerous. A true menace whose actions changed everything around him in the worst possible hell. What was memorable, at least to me, was the way the DLC is presenting its story. From the moments of intensity and danger at the beginning of the chapter, to the ones in the end in which the player truly feels Yuri's vengeance and motivations, and the cold confrontation between her and Hammerhead makes the player feel satisfaction in a way towards Yuri's grief, seeing her succeed in its vengeance. And the post-credits scene in which Hammerhead survives and the idea of the third DLC is planted is made in such a way the player might say, yeah, I was sure it wasn't done yet. The story of this episode is made in a unique way, and it feels different from what it was presented until now in the game. It gives a certain vibe that makes the whole DLC feel like, if it's necessary and the right villains show up, the world of Spider-Man can become so dark and serious in an instant, making it to feel more real and credible, rather just than a good fantasy in which the hero always wins and almost everything is fine somehow in the end. I like how the scenery of this episode is made. It gives a unique feeling of a classical story with gangsters. Only now I realized somehow the way of how the developers created the atmosphere of those DLCs. If in the first episode the whole city takes place during the night, giving a powerful sensation of mystery, adventure and intrigue that makes you want to truly explore Black Cat's adventure in New York City, this episode is made to truly feel like you are in a story with gangsters. Everything from the weather from the game to the way the side missions and the criminal activities that are presented in this chapter are designed, all of them are made to present a powerful noir atmosphere. Combined with the seriousness of the story, it's like you might play a small noir game with a superhero. It might give a small sensation of familiarity with Spider-Man Noir, probably, but I think this is just maybe a coincidence or just a nod for the ones that truly know the lore and the multiverse of the video games. To me, this is just a nice way to reference those old noir gangster stories from the 1940s. Come to think of it, if the player selects the noir costume as a cosmetic, yeah, the whole game experience might take the fans to this idea of that, yes, it is made in a way to reference the whole noir universe of Marvel Comics. I do not think it is, but the video game allows the player to play its own fantasy, after all. The way the side activities are connected with the main story, like they are Hammerhead's front businesses and Spider-Man has to take them down in order to weaken his operation, is a nice touch to the whole noir gangster motif of the episode. The use of Sable Tech by Hammerhead's henchmen takes this whole noir feeling to the true basis of the game. The tech is one of the main elements of this DLC. Apparently the main elements Hammerhead wanted to get in order to get stronger and rule the city, and being a remnant of the main game's story, it makes sense to come back as an element of continuity. I talked only about 2 episodes of the DLC, and if I think to the main story and its themes and style, I truly like how the developers succeeded to create with only one superhero game that normally could be lighthearted most of the time, so many details that could make the player think to a lot of genres and themes and feelings. The lore of Spider-Man allows them to do all those things, it is true, but you must also have the right developers to know how to create such a story, with so many layers and details in the game's world. Just like the first episode of the DLC, Turf Wars presents the same formula of gameplay. The DLC can be completed around 6 hours. The game presents some side activities that are connected to the main story of the DLC, enlarging the context and the lore of the DLC's story. Screwball's challenges are back, in which you have to do different stealth sections or to defeat a large number of enemies with certain devices, and this time it looked to me the challenges were much easier, somehow, in this DLC, compared with the first one. And the crime activities from around the city are contextualized with the story of the DLC, in which the player has to stop confrontations between gangsters or to make sure certain witnesses are protected. Due to Sable tech, some activities are getting tough quite fast. Of course, if the player completes the DLC 100%, it will unlock 3 new suits that could be worn anytime during the gameplay. I like the developers kept the formula for the DLC and that they try to give a small amount of side activities, even though it can clearly be felt they focused more, this time, on the main story of the episode. It is not a bad thing in my opinion, they chose to do this. Compared with the first DLC, which added a bit of lore around Black Cat through a side mission, the second DLC was more straight toward the bad guy, and I totally liked this thing. The confrontation with Hammerhead from the last main mission feels like a very difficult boss battle, and the developers made this challenge to make the viewer feel extremely satisfied when it is defeated. The way the game presents Screwball out of nowhere is made in a way to break the tension somehow from all the attention of the DLC, making it like an annoying intervention, a thing even Spider-Man mentions that. But for not being a fan of the character, I just went to make the challenges and then went to the final part of the game, because I wanted to see how the story ends. The new thing, however, was the type of villain that uses energy shields and bashes towards Spider-Man, leaving behind a trace of energy as area of effect that causes damage towards the player. The new type of villain is a bit annoying and unpredictable at the beginning, especially if you have many enemies to defeat at the same time, but if you take your time to learn its pattern, it is quite alright. The annoyance comes back when Hammerhead is using the same type of attack because somehow he's more violent than the normal henchman, but it is understandable, after all he has to be the final boss of the chapter, it has to be hard to defeat. Overall, the content presented in the DLC was quite alright. It kept the formula from the first episode and it felt a bit easier at times than the first DLC, probably due to the familiarity of the content with the main game. For a short story chapter, the Turf Wars did the same thing that the Heist DLC did. It presented a new chapter to the main game, in which there are some new challenging elements that could make the player feel intrigued by its contents. It has been a while since I started to play this game, and it took me a lot of years to properly put my thoughts on paper regarding it. I remember when I first played this DLC that it felt like something different than the rest of the game. The story somehow connected better with the player and made me want to see the final part of the story. The dark tone of the context, the feeling the city is in total chaos, like a war is raging on the streets, made the game feel alive. In my opinion, it felt more alive with this style of storytelling than the one used in the main game, with the Sable Corps taking over the city during the quarantine from the third act of the game. The second DLC does not add too much, only context and story. But its story is what impacts the player. It makes you want to wait for the last chapter of this epilogue and see how everything is gonna end. Whether it was intended or not, I like the developers created this story as grounded as possible. Hammerhead is an incredible villain in the comics. Compared with other big bads Spider-Man fought, it might fall short, but now it depends on the story. In this game, it really is a threat. It feels more violent and brutal than Kingpin or other characters, at least to me. I can't wait to see what is gonna happen in the last DLC. I am going to play it and complete my thoughts. Until then, I am glad I came back to complete this list of videos. It felt nice to go back to this game to play it once more, like it might be the first time I am playing it.